I could see us falling into a similar thing if we were to over-order stuff just to have it. Because the idea is like you're scaling that way, right? You're essentially able to make more money because you're getting better prices by buying at, bulk.
Yes.
It's the Costco concept, I guess you'd say, or.
I think it is. We've done it this way for so long, so why change?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of deal. That mentality is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
The problem is it is broken.
They
just
don't know
it's broken. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember hearing this.
That's when I built that software for, construction management, it was more or less it was with the understanding that we're in a time period that you're having younger generations that have grown up with the technology and kind of know it inherently secondhand. We've talked about having them punch in the software, like in and out type deal. But ultimately we feel like, we're gonna be in there and in this industry, specifically plumbing, the older generation, they hang on for a very long time. And like we were discussing previously, they hang on for a long time, and instead of going out on top, they're scaling down.
Yeah.
To like today's topic is near and dear to my heart. Talking about technology and the tech gap as it relates to why plumbing companies and distribution companies in the space are so behind the eight ball as it relates to technology. Obviously the both of us, I think, share a affinity for technology and software and how to use it and leverage it and so on and so forth. I think we could go on for many hours talking about why there is such a disparity between this industry and other industries using technology.
I don't think it's just this industry, though. I think if you really dove deep into other industries, I'm not sure technology is being used in a lot of different industries. Probably. Now, this one obviously being a little more archaic than others, but I think there's several industries, but this particular industry, plumbing and distributors, it's something about the feel of the mom and pop shop, and then because a lot of these people have passed down their businesses to their kids.
Right.
Yeah, and the kids are just running it based on the way it was running with their parents.
Past.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think it's because they're afraid to make mistakes, or they just those are tried and true methods and they don't want to deviate, they're making money, why change a good thing type
I
of
don't
deal?
think it's tried and true, and I don't know that they're making as much money as they think they are because they don't have the technology to actually.
They don't really know what they're making.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a true statement.
Yeah, I think it is. We've done it this way for so long, so why change?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of deal. That mentality is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
The problem is it is broken.
They
just
don't know
it's broken. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember hearing a story. There's the boat basically floating on the rising tide, and everything seems good.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the water starts to recede, and they're wondering, well, how are these rocks tearing up the bottom of the boat? They didn't realize the rocks, whether it's being lack of technology, inventory control issues from a distribution perspective, returns processing or whatever, those rocks have been there from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, until the sales started to go down, then they realized, wait a minute, we need to start addressing these problems. But they still don't want to use technology to address it. They think they can do it with more sales.
I think this reminds me of something you recommended to me, which was to that book, The Goal.
The Goal, yeah.
So I started listening to that book.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Eliyahu M. Golder.
And that metaphor that you just used, I think, is super appropriate in the sense that they don't even, it starts with what are you measuring?
Exactly.
Right? So understand what you're measuring, what your goal is, and then work backwards. And then you're using the technology essentially to diagnose what's working, what's not working, and then, okay, are we achieving that goal? And are we understanding the goal more or less? And that book, I think, from what I've read so far or listened to so far, it kind of epitomizes that one thing that you don't even know what you're looking for.
That's exactly, and most of the time when you look at these organizations that have these legacy systems, they know that it's not optimized, but they don't know what to do. And
Yeah.
then they start looking at the cost and they start trying to figure out, well, how do I address this animal? But I use the analogy all the time. You're going to basically automate inefficient processes
Right.
because you still have to address your processes because you need to know what the ultimate goal is.
Right.
And in most cases, their goal is, I'm going to basically service the hell out the customer. That's not always the goal. The goal, as you'll see from that book, the ultimate goal is to make money.
Yeah,
Unless
making
you're
money.
a nonprofit, you're in business to make money.
Right.
And if you're doing anything that prevents you from making money and being more profitable, then you need to eliminate that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and that's something I know that we've learned, from running a plumbing company and having a partner that is highly concerned with execution of the jobs, of the work, just getting the work done. Like his brain just is just consumed with execution.
Yes.
Ordering material, doing the job. Ordering material, do the job. Get the job done. Do whatever it takes to get the job done. But ultimately, it was never like, I used to explain to him, like, you're doing the job, but you're exhausting your energy. In some cases, you're literally doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And you're not making any money. So even after we measure it, you're seeing that we're not making any money, but we're still taking on the jobs. It doesn't pay to even take the job on if at the end of the day you're not making any money. So, and sometimes it's a hard concept it's not a hard concept to understand, but like there's some scenarios we get put in where it's like a moral dilemma versus, oh, we need to make money here.
Yeah.
It's like, an elderly lady will call us, no heat. We're going there and, we're conscious of cost, in some senses. So,
Yeah.
So there's scenarios you'll be put in, but at the end of the day, it's about making money. You're not doing this for goodwill. Like you said, you're not here for goodwill. You're making a profit. You're running a business. And oh, by the way, all the people that work for us are depending on you to make payroll every week so that they can feed their families. So, you got to keep that kind of in the back of your mind. I think,
and a lot of it, I think, is path dependency. They've done it that way for so long.
Yeah.
And you look at...
don't want to deviate from what has worked. And
that's exactly right.
It's just, it's just habit. Almost becomes habitual.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, though, that you take a person, you and I drive home from work a certain way. You very seldom deviate on that drive.
And humans are creatures of habits.
That's exactly right. You do the same thing over and over. And when you roll that into a business, it becomes a serious problem because that obviously limits your growth. It prevents you from being more profitable. A lot of times, like you said, you don't realize that because you don't have technology, you're not making money on these jobs, or the distributor is not making money on the customer.
Yeah.
But in their mind, oh, well, this customer keeps the lights on. They don't.
Yeah.
Because the amount of money you're spending to fix their orders or get these shipments there quicker or I don't know, ship UPS red or UPS next day or something like that.
Right.
You end up spending a lot more money on that customer.
To make the customer happy.
That's
and at the end of the day,
right.
you're not reaping any benefit.
None.
From it.
And if you don't have the technology to evaluate that,
right,
then you have no clue.
Yeah, because there's companies that run things in the red. They'll run something in the red in order to reach a certain goal or an outcome that they're looking for with a certain customer. Or they can do it with a certain product if it's a product-based situation, not a service-based. But, one of the things that comes to my mind when we talk about this topic is, I think it was a discussion that we had, and it was revolved around the company. I had spoken to you, and you had said you should start with, like, when I was reaching out, I built software, and I was reaching out, cold calling people. You had explained to me, there's a lot of businesses out there, specifically distributors, that don't even have a presence online.
That's exactly right.
And that, I think if anything explains the lack of leveraging technology, not even having a website in 2025, and you're running a tremendous business. And, like I could see it from our perspective where we're a small SMB, we have 13 employees, and we're not having a website and we're word of mouth, let's say, right? But in a distribution system, like when you're actually buying and selling products, not to have e-commerce, you have the resources to make it happen. So like we may not have the resources. Let's say we don't have the money, but in that situation, there's really no excuse not to have the e-commerce.
But if you, the last company I worked at, the owners were not old. I mean, they were mid-50s.
Yeah.
But they couldn't see the value in it because they were generating enough money from word of mouth or being a local distributor.
Right.
They were happy with what they were getting. But then when they looked at, hey, let's open up an e-commerce shop, and it started accelerating, the growth was accelerating fairly rapidly.
Yeah.
Then they started complaining about the margins. Well, this is why we never did it, because we don't make as much money. But you have the other customers you don't make as much money on, and you're happy with that because you can touch and feel them. These other people, from an e-commerce perspective, you can't touch and feel, but those are the guys that can keep your lights on.
Yeah.
They're the ones that can actually generate enough product, because you look at that long tail, you can generate enough revenue from some of these smaller companies that you're getting 5,000 orders in a month as opposed to 500, and the revenue is not as great.
Right, but you're doing
still
volume.
That you're doing a massive amount of volume.
Yeah.
But they just started complaining about, hey, we can't make any money on this, because you're comparing that to the customer that works and lives down the street from you, and you're making a killing on him sometimes. But this guy that just wants to buy 15 fittings, he's going to give you 15 fittings today, 15 fittings next week, 15 fittings the week after, and there's 50,000 of those people out there.
Right, and why not? Yeah. Why not take it? I mean, is there a problem in executing, like in terms of taking the order, shipping the order, more overhead type deal?
It is, because if you have trucks and you're used to operating and delivering things to the job site or to the shop, then now you're talking about using UPS. In some instances, UPS doesn't deliver to job sites. In some instances, the plumber needs it at 8 o'clock in the morning, so when he shows up at Mrs. Jones' house. But that's all part of the sales process as well. If you look at an Amazon started just getting you the material that you ordered. And then they became, we can get you anything you order. And then they got to, okay, you can have it next day. And now there's a lot of stuff you order from Amazon. They deliver, you order in the morning, they have it to you.
Same day. It's amazing.
Exactly, same day. But when you don't have, as you said, the resources or the understanding or the technology, now you're looking at it saying, well, how do I get this UPS order to the customer if I've never dealt with UPS before? And UPS gives you free machines. They give you the technology for free because they figured out how to do it very efficiently. But if I'm not comfortable with that, then it's easier for me to just say, yeah, you know what, we can't do that. We don't make enough money on it.
Yeah, it's just it's an easier narrative.
It is, 100%. And I always use the example of the mom is baking a turkey for Christmas, and her husband Tom asks, well, hey, why do you break the legs off the turkey before you put it in the oven? And the mom is like, well, you know what? I don't know, but my mother will be here, and she taught that to me. Why don't you ask her when she comes for Thanksgiving dinner? Thanksgiving dinner shows up. He goes down and asks the mom, hey, why does Sandra break the legs off the turkey before she puts it in the oven? Well, I don't know, but my mother's here. She taught me, so why don't you go ask her? And then he goes down to Barbara. He's like, hey, they break the legs off the turkey before they put it in the oven. What's the reason for that? She says, well, we did it because the turkey was too big to fit in our oven. But that concept has passed from generation to generation without asking the question. So now, back to how we started, this son is going to take over the business, and he just knows he's got to break the legs off that turkey. Doesn't know why, but he has to do it the same way his dad did it. And then his son will end up doing it the same way. And next thing you know, they'll be talking about AI taking over the industry and how they're losing all this business. Well, then it's too late.
You're behind the 8 ball.
That's exactly right. So
I mean, that's what, when I built that software for, construction management, it was more or less it was with the understanding that we're in a time period that you're having younger generations that have grown up with the technology and kind of know it inherently secondhand.
Exactly.
And they'll be taking over the mom and pops, and they'll use the technology to leverage it, mainly because there's not enough skilled labor out there. So in order to get ahead, if you have some level of intelligence, you're going to realize pretty quickly, you're going to diagnose the situation and realize, in order for me to get ahead, I'm going to need to leverage, some layer of technology to make my business more profitable, to be able to communicate easier with my employees, to just do things quicker.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that is, I don't, I'm seeing that over time, but I still feel like it's playing out very, very slowly. And in this industry, specifically plumbing, the older generation, they hang on for a very long time. And like we were discussing previously, they hang on for a long time. And instead of, going out on top, they're scaling down to like one or two employees and themselves, and being, in a lot of cases, being miserable and just hanging on, and then unloading the business, where it's like you would think it would be more intuitive to do the opposite. Get out on top, sell for the max that you can, and go do whatever go take that money and go do whatever you like, but or hand it off to somebody, a son, daughter, nephew, whatever it is. And I have come across some of that, but we're getting into it now because we're starting to purchase some of these little small businesses. So I'm seeing it firsthand, like how it's transpiring. Some are just reluctant to sell, and they're just going to do it until they're in the grave.
Yeah.
Others are just, they want to sell, they want to get out, but are reluctant, or like I said, have scaled down to a point where it's kind of like the business isn't really worth what they think it is. Because they're giving you prices on what it was when they were
at their peak.
And they're telling you, well, I've been sending work away, and I can get you XYZ if you purchase me. But instead of just doing it and running the teams to do it, or doing it, them doing it at a younger age, so it's not so tedious for them.
Yeah.
They kind of just phased themselves out, and then they're looking to sell, and now you're trying to figure out, well, what is this really worth? There's structure there. There's some systems in place. Sometimes they have technologies, but I haven't come across one that really has impressed me yet. That really, they blow me out of the water, where they're using all sorts of technology, and I would be willing to pay just to understand some of their systems and the way they're doing things.
Well, in some instances, I can't speak from a plumbing business perspective, but in some instances, there could be too much technology as well, because even you look at your smartphone, and a majority of it you don't use. You basically make phone calls, you check your email, you look at the video here and there, and then there's one or two other things you do.
Social
and that's
media.
It. Exactly. But there's 5 million apps that come delivered with your smartphone. And from the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, that applies whether it's from a customer perspective, a revenue perspective, or even a technology perspective. I mean, someone can implement an ERP system, which is enterprise resource planning, or a WMS, which is barcoding, warehouse management system, and they're still only going to use a small portion of it because they just don't understand it. They bought it because the industry was telling them they need to buy it.
Right, trend. It's like trendy, or it's like a trend. They think they're going to be competitive with it.
That's exactly right. And then they don't implement it correctly. So they want to blame either the implementation company on that, that on the implementation company, or on the software company themselves, or they don't train their people after they implement it. And then they look at it and say, well, you know what, out of these 500 tasks that it's capable of completing, we can basically do 10 of them.
Yeah.
And that's good enough. And it's not good enough, but
they're paying for the full bundle of software. Now the software companies do that on purpose. They right? I mean, they're basically developing this piece of software that is tremendous in nature, has all these features, but can't possibly think that an individual company is going to utilize all those use cases.
Well, but I've been on both sides, right? So from a customer perspective, working with a software company saying, hey, we need some more minor tweaks in the software, and they make these enhancements or these modifications, and it works perfect. And then they program that into the system because that is actually best practices in a lot of cases.
Right.
But then a person that is actually, or a company that is actually purchasing that software, they know better than the software company in their head. We don't need to implement all of this stuff. We're happy with just these few little minor things that from a distribution, we can receive the material and it. Like The one company told me, he says, yeah, we just want to barcode the product as it comes in. What the hell does that do? That doesn't do anything. If you don't have the locations configured and you don't have the product where you can scan it when it gets loaded on the truck or the picker's going to use it. Yeah, I just want to fix receiving. But receiving is a major part of your business. But if I receive it faster and get it put it away and I still pick it wrong, what the hell did I accomplish?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he couldn't see it that way. He just knew everyone's telling him that the product comes in and it sits here for a few hours, and next thing you know, we can't find it. So in his mind, I just need to fix receiving. And he was all in on purchasing some type of barcoding software. And even his comment was, can't we just put labels on the product? It already comes with labels, with UPC codes.
Yeah.
Yeah, now let's implement something so that we can just scan those. Oh, that sounds too complex. But that's what you're up against with a lot of these distributors. Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. It's like, again, it's like, it's identifying, like when you go into a distributor and they're asking you to help them, it's identifying like, okay, here's a short list of what you need to tackle, what you must prioritize, because you're never going to get to all of it necessarily. Or
it is prioritized, but normally from my perspective, I do it completely different. We basically look at analyzing what your processes are. So the first thing we do is just look at your processes. And then based on that, we talk about what type of system may be the right system for you, because they do have a lot of bells and whistles, and some stuff you may not actually need that.
Right.
So after that analysis takes place and we identify what needs to be fixed so that it conforms with some of these best practices that are going to come along with the software.
Yeah.
From my perspective, we say if you have 100 items, then we're addressing all 100 of those items. We're not going to let anything go, because one of those small things at number 98 actually affects what the customer is going to end up seeing, the ultimate customer is going to end up seeing.
Yeah.
So we address it all, and we do prioritize it and look at it. And typically, from a distribution perspective, like I said, it's receiving is going to be the most important, even though they're going to, we got to service the customer. Yeah, but if I get it in wrong, if I put the wrong gas in the car's not going to run.
Doesn't move.
And they don't get that. Exactly. Yeah. So you have receiving, and then you start looking at the put-away process, and then from the put-away process, the actual inventory control, and then from inventory control, the picking process, and then you go to loading and delivery and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers there.
It's a whole, because each, just receiving alone doesn't seem like it's that complex. I'm just going to get the material from the vendor, and I'm going to make sure that if they send me 10, that I actually have 10 and it's the right product.
Yeah.
But what if you deal with non-stocks, which are items you don't typically stock? So now it comes in as a slash. So what do you do with that?
Yeah.
And people look at it and say, oh, we didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
And what do you do if this non-stock is tagged to a sales order, and that sales order is sitting in a queue waiting for it to be back order filled so it can release this non-stock with these other items? All that starts from receiving.
Yeah.
And you start going layer after layer after layer, and you have to address these things. Otherwise, you say, like another company I work with spent, I think, $500,000-$600,000 purchasing a system, trying to implement it, couldn't implement it, and they just walked away from it.
Wow.
And a lot of companies do that. They purchase these systems, they spend a lot of money, they realize it's more complex than what they were prepared to take on, and then they just walk away and say, that's it.
That's incredible.
It's incredible for you and I, because we don't want to waste $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million or whatever. But even you look at some of these large companies, these extremely large organizations, where you look at some of the technology failures out there, and people have purchased, whether it was Oracle or SAP or some of these large systems, and then realize, hey, this is way more complex than we thought it was going to be. Yeah. And next thing you know, you hear the CEO's getting fired and the CFO is gone, and and it becomes a nightmare.
And I think, like what it sounds like you're saying is similar to kind of the things that I've always thought in my space in terms of just the plumbing area, is that, without a system or a process that, implemented from within the company, we already have a standard process, whatever you're using, Excel, or you're using, however you're doing stuff, that takes precedence over the technology, in the sense that I can give you my technology, but it's not going to be useful if you don't have processes and procedures within your organization. You're not going to be able to utilize. And my software is simple, like compared to what you're talking about. I mean, those are very complex systems. Mine is just more intuitive and easy to use. Obviously, there's always going to be data entry. You're never going to get away from that. But in terms of just the time you're taking to learn it, it's easier, but same problems. If you don't have anything internal to say this is how we do things, you then taking a system and thinking that you're just going to take this technology, it's going to solve all your problems. It's not. It's going to make things more complicated. And if you're not technologically savvy, which a lot of these, owner operators are not, even in whether it's distribution or in owner operators of plumbing businesses, electricians, things like that, they're just going to walk away from it because they'd rather just write it down on paper because it's tried and true.
Exactly.
And they know it's there, set in stone, and then they're going to post the paper in the office. But the problem with the paper is it doesn't travel. It doesn't. You can't communicate that when people are in the field. And and that's one of the other main things that maybe we should get to is that the complexities, at least on my end, it's the same on your end, I think, but the complexities, why technology hasn't been adopted, I believe one of the main things is because the field is very complicated. So what I mean by that is when you get into the field, executing a job can get very complicated. Like we discussed last time, there's many masters, there's many layers. So you're dealing with, on a bigger commercial job, let's say you're dealing with engineer, you're dealing with contractor or construction management company. Then you're dealing with all the subs. And then you're dealing with customer, whoever that is, owner of the building, could be owner of the building and tenant. So you're dealing with so many layers there. And then you've got to manage the workload. Yeah. And things happen on the job, meaning you open the wall, there's a problem, you didn't anticipate it, or something changes, or something was omitted that now needs to be included, and that totally then has to be updated on the drawings, and then so on and so forth. So people don't want to deviate from what they know because that's what gets them through their day. And so now you're going to tell them, carry this iPad around with you. And, in order to communicate properly, do X, Y, and Z. Now, at the end of the day, if they put the same amount of time they put into learning their trade as they do with the technology, as a business owner, they will come to realize quickly that it is worth the time. But they have to get over that first hump, which is just get yourself engrossed in it and you'll pick it up. It's not, it's something that just like you did learn the trade. The trade is much more complicated than the technology that I'm showing you. But it's just the frustration level because especially in the small SMBs, it's, everything is, you're moving from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. I mean, the number of phone calls that my partner more specifically gets on a daily basis is insane. And you don't really have time to process. So it's like, if it's not working for me, I'm moving on to the next thing. Yeah. And that becomes a problem. So if there wasn't somebody like me sitting in the seat next to him to say, stop being a baby and just try to figure it out, you're being ridiculous. Look how easy it is. And I do it 1, 2, 3. And then he sees that it can be done. It kind of breaks down those walls. And my partner is the quintessential prototype that you want to test software against because it is like teaching somebody that has never seen a smartphone and he uses a smartphone every single day, but he still has trouble sending an email.
It's amazing because, like you mentioned, if the processes aren't there, then you're going to basically automate inefficient processes. Yeah, it's going to be horrible. Yeah. But people, you would be blown away how many companies from a distribution perspective where I've sat down, talked to them, did the conference room pilot, done certain things. And they're like, we just want you to implement the software. Find something and implement it. But first, we have to perform the analysis. I have to know I'm not going to buy you a Rolls Royce when you just need a Hyundai. Yeah. And I'm not going to buy you a Hyundai when you need the Rolls Royce. Yeah. So it just they don't.
Do you put visuals up for them? Do they try to visualize it for them? Because I know, like in plumbing, it's some people are just more visual and they can't see it. So it's like And that's a huge hurdle because like with software, it's a visual thing. You kind of have to see it, and you have to get them to see the product. You know, from an entrepreneur's standpoint, you have to get them to see the product. That's the first hurdle. Like you have to know that they're willing to try technology. So that's the first hurdle. Second hurdle is you get them in the software, and you got to kind of make it visually appealing to them so that they stay in it. So in terms of your standpoint, I'm just inquiring about, do you ever put something visually in front of them to say like, to make those comparisons of the Rolls Royce to the Hyundai and why you're doing what you're doing?
You do. And not only do you show them the visuals, I like using their terminology or their lingo. So if they have certain products or certain customers, all of my pilots, we actually use their data or their information. But on top of that, you go to other distributors that are using different types of technology, and you actually somehow you talk to whoever, but you sit in a conference room or go to a warehouse shop or you go to their office and you actually see the technology working.
Yeah.
And then I'll point out, so they're performing steps 1, 2, 3. You actually have 1, 2, 3, but then you add on because you're modifying something or changing something. Right. So this is where that would work. And they get to see it all. And they still, I read somewhere like 40%, it's less than 50% of companies actually have WMS or the barcode technology.